Why you'd hate being a pirate in the 1700s, welcome, weary traveller of the digital seas. Dim the lanterns in your mind and settle into your hammock of imagination. Tonight's bedtime tale isn't of princesses or knights, but of scurvy, rats, and the constant smell of death. Turn on your ocean sounds if you have them, because tonight you're joining the rank and file of the most misunderstood profession of the 18th century. You're about to become a pirate, not the kind with the parrot and the catchy shanties, the real kind, the kind where your teeth fall out, and your captain might feed you your own fingers if you displease him. Sweet dreams. Part 1. Waking up in hell but with sea views. You wake up to the aroma of wet rope, dead dreams, and 37 unwashed men. Your eyes crack open like shellfish reluctantly yielding to a knife. The year is 1718 and you've somehow ended up aboard the Morbid Vengeance, a mid-sized pirate vessel currently sailing somewhere in the Caribbean. Congratulations, you've made terrible life choices. Your bed is a hammock woven from coarse hemp that's chafed your back raw overnight. The fabric reeks of previous occupants who may or may not have died of dysentery in the very spot you're lying. 3 men have used this hammock before you. 2 are now fish food. 1 is the guy who keeps staring at you from across the deck with 1 eye and 7 fingers. He never blinks, even when he sleeps. The lower deck, where you're currently experiencing consciousness, is approximately 4 feet tall. That's right, you can't stand up straight. No one can. You'll spend much of your pirate career permanently hunched like a questionee mark, which seems fitting since you'll constantly be questioning why you're here. Oh, and the company. It's like a frat house if everyone had syphilis and access to cannons. The man in the hammock next to yours rolls over and vomits onto the floor. No one reacts. This is Tuesday after all. Speaking of the floor, it's not actually a floor, it's a deck. And it's perpetually damp with seawater, rum, urine, blood, and a sticky substance you've decided not to identify for the sake of your rapidly deteriorating mental health. Your bare feet make a sickening peeling sound with each step, like pulling apart grilled cheese. If you were hoping for shoes, I have bad news. Most pirates are barefoot. Boots are for captains and quartermasters, or for special occasions like raiding villages or attending hangings. Consider your developing foot calluses as nature's shoes. They're growing thicker by the day, along with your disillusionment. Oh, there's the wake-up bell. As if the chorus of coughing, farting, and occasional death rattles wasn't enough of an
alarm clock. All hands on deck, you miserable carcasses. That's the boatswain. His job is to make sure everyone is working.
Your job is to not get hit by the small whip he carries, lovingly nicknamed the Persuader. Some say it's made from the dried penis of a sperm whale. Others say it's just ordinary leather. All agree that it hurts like hell when it connects with your sun-blistered shoulders. Speaking of sun, it's time to head up. The massive Caribbean sun is already turning the upper deck into a griddle. Hope you like your skin extra crispy. If you're not subscribed yet, consider hitting that button. If a man named One-Eyed Pete has ever betrayed you, smash that like button like it owes you Spanish gold. Part 2. Breakfast of Champions and Scurvy-Ridden Deckhands. Hungry after your restful 4 hours of sleep? Good news, it's breakfast time. Bad news, you might prefer starvation. The ship's cook, a man who lost his position as an executioner for being too creative, serves breakfast from a cauldron that hasn't been properly cleaned since Columbus got lost. Today's gourmet offering is called lobscus, a stew made from ship's biscuit soaked in seawater and animal fat. The ship's biscuit, also charmingly known as hardtack, is a simple cracker made of flour and water. that has the consistency of fired clay and often contains bonus protein in the form of weevils and maggots. You'll notice your shipmates don't seem bothered by the squirming white larvae in their food. That's because they're starving. It's actually extra nutrition. Their standards have plummeted faster than a man keel-hauled with lead weights. The smart pirates pick out the weevils and eat them separately. They're the freshest thing you'll consume all day. Wash it all down with your morning beverage, grog. It's 1 part rum, 4 parts water with a splash of lemon or lime juice when available. The rum makes the stagnant water somewhat palatable while killing just enough bacteria to keep you functional. The citrus is actually keeping you alive, preventing scurvy, though nobody understands why yet. They just know that sailors who drink citrus don't end up with their teeth falling out and their gums bleeding like they've been chewing glass. The water itself comes from barrels that have been sitting in the hold for weeks or months. It's green. Sometimes it moves on its own. You drink it anyway because the alternative is death by dehydration, which some days doesn't sound so bad. Fun historical fact: the average pirate consumed around 1 gallon of alcohol per day. Not because they were party animals, but because sobriety made reality too horrific to bear. Look around as you eat your writhing breakfast. Your crewmates are a gallery of human deterioration. Missing limbs, eye patches that actually cover empty, festering sockets, syphilitic sores, and scurvy blackened. Gums abound. That guy in the corner is missing his nose, not from battle, but from advanced syphilis. The disease is so common that the crew has a shanty about it. They sing it on special occasions like Tuesdays. See the man eating alone, the one with elaborate tattoos and a necklace of what appear to be human ears? Don't make eye contact, that's the ship's surgeon. His medical qualifications include being good with a saw and having once dissected a pelican out of curiosity. Later, when your inevitable wound becomes infected, he'll give you 2 treatment options: rum or amputation. Sometimes both if he's feeling generous. Oh look, the captain has emerged from his quarters for breakfast inspection. Everyone straightens slightly, which raises the average crew height from pathetic to merely disappointing. Part 3, morning duties, or how to break your back for hours on end. Breakfast consumed, it's time for the day's labor. Forget the swashbuckling adventure you were promised. Being a pirate is 99% thankless chores and 1% sheer terror. You're assigned, duty today is helping to careening the ship. This means hauling the entire vessel to shore, tipping it on its side, and scraping millions of barnacles and marine growth off the hull. Picture the worst day at the worst job you've ever had. Multiply it by 17, add fire ants, and you're getting close. The ship has to be careened because marine creatures love attaching themselves to wooden hulls. If left unchecked, these hitchhikers will eventually slow the ship to the point where you can't outrun naval vessels or merchant ships. And since outrunning and overtaking are the 2 primary verbs in pirate business plans, this is a problem. The actual process involves stripping the ship of everything heavy, including cannons which weigh up to 6,000 pounds each, anchoring near shore, attaching ropes to the masts, and literally pulling the ship onto its side using the combined strength of men who mostly have rickets and the early stages of liver failure. While half the crew pulls, you're part of the unlucky group that gets to do the scraping. Armed with long-handled chisels, you'll spend hours in waist-deep water removing stubborn sea life from the hull. The wood is covered in a substance called slime, which is exactly what it sounds like. The barnacles have edges sharp enough to slice your hands like paper cuts, except deeper and filled with salt water for extra sting. Every now and then, someone spots a shark. Work doesn't stop. If anything, it speeds up. Oh, and the water you're standing in. It's the toilet. The ocean is where everything goes. Human waste, food waste, actual humans who've expired or displeased the captain. The Caribbean might look pristine and blue from a resort, but from here it's a soup of decomposition, teeming with creatures that consider your legs appetizing. As you work, the sun climbs higher. Your skin, particularly the back of your neck, begins to blister. There's no sunscreen in 1718, just the progressive leatherification of your epidermis. Many pirates develop skin cancers that they attribute to curses or divine punishment. The patches of black rot on their faces and ears are badges of a life at sea, solar souvenirs that will eventually kill them if the scurvy, syphilis, or captain's temper doesn't get them first. If you're enjoying this soothing bedtime tale of maritime suffering, consider gently tapping that subscribe button. It's like Mutiny, but against the algorithm. Part 4, Lunchtime. The culinary abyss continues. And, just when you think it can't get worse, it does. Because now it's lunchtime. Hope you weren't expecting a menu change. It's ship's biscuit again, but this time served with salt horse. Beef or pork, preserved in so much salt, it's barely recognizable as animal protein. The meat is typically at least 6 months old, often older. It's stored in barrels in the hold where it develops a protective outer layer that's less crust and more petrification. The salt content is so high that your lips will crack and bleed as you eat. This is actually considered a perk because it serves as impromptu lip color for when you want to look fancy while threatening merchants. Some days, lunch might include fish that the crew caught. Fresh food is such a rarity that fights break out over who gets the eyes, which contain precious moisture and nutrients. The captain always gets the liver, not out of greed, but because it's the only defense against the vitamin deficiencies that are slowly killing everyone. Look at your crewmates fighting over a fish head like it's treasure. In a way it is. The brain contains fatty acids that help stave off the madness that comes with prolonged malnutrition. You've noticed some men talking to invisible companions lately. That's not ghosts, that's advanced thiamine deficiency. As you choke down your salt horse, which requires soaking in water overnight to make it remotely chewable, you watch the ship's cat prowl by. Don't get attached, it's not a pet, it's vermin control, and in dire circumstances, an emergency food source. The current cat is the 4th this voyage. Nobody talks about what happened to the first 3. The one luxury at lunch is a sip of wine for each man. It's vinegary and tastes faintly of the rat that drowned in the barrel last month, but it's not water or grog, so it feels celebratory. The wine serves a crucial social function as well. It's during wine distribution that the captain makes announcements. Today's news: you're changing course to intercept a Spanish merchant vessel spotted by the Morning Watch. The crew erupts in cheers that sound more like the wails of the damned, which is appropriate because many of you will be joining the damned by sundown tomorrow. And here comes that sinking feeling in your salt-parched gut. Your first pirate battle is less than 24 hours away. Part 5, Afternoon. Delight. Just kidding, it's more work. After lunch comes a brief period that modern workers would recognize as break time, except there's no break. Instead, there's a rotation of duties, which means you get to stop scraping barnacles and move on to the equally delightful task of repairing sails. Sailcloth is heavy canvas that feels like it's made from concrete and spite. Your tool is a palm and needle, a thimble-like device strapped to your hand, pushing a needle thick enough to qualify as a weapon through multiple layers of sun-hardened fabric. Your fingertips, already cut from barnacle scraping, now develop new and innovative bleeding patterns. The sun has reached its zenith and the deck is hot enough to fry salt horse, which would actually improve its flavor. Your skin has progressed from uncomfortably warm through painfully hot to a transcendent state of burning that your nervous system has simply given up on reporting. Congratulations, you've achieved sunburn enlightenment. As you sow, you participate in the universal sailor's pastime, gossip. The ship is a floating small town with all the drama and none of the privacy. Today's hot topics include which crew member is stealing extra rum? It's everyone when they can. Whether the captain's recent mood swings are due to syphilis, reaching his brain, or an actual possession by sea demons. If the ship's surgeon has been eyeing your relatively healthy limbs for his collection. Pirates are democratic in many ways, but they're also deeply superstitious. As you work, the man next to you explains the rules. No whistling, it summons storms. No women on board, bad luck. Unless they're disguised as men, in which case it's fine until they're discovered. No bananas, attract deadly spiders. And never kill an albatross, instant doom. He then shows you a small pouch around his neck containing his personal protection, a chicken foot, a pierced coin, and what he claims is a mermaid's fingernail but looks suspiciously like a clamshell fragment. You nod respectfully. Tomorrow you might be depending on his chicken foot for protection from Spanish bullets. The afternoon bell signals rotation to your next task, gun drilling. Even if you've never touched a cannon in your life, and you haven't, you're now part of a gun crew. Specialized skills are a luxury this floating tetanus factory can't afford. Part 6, Cannon Fodder. Literally, you are cannon fodder. The ship boasts 12 cannons per side, each with a loving nickname related to either bodily functions or elaborate death scenarios. You've been assigned to Bloody Mary's Revenge, a 6-pounder on the starboard side with a reputation for backfiring. Gun drill is exactly what it sounds like, practicing loading, aiming, and pretend firing the cannon until your crew can do it while actively dying of multiple diseases. The steps are simple in theory. Step 1. Clean the barrel with a water-soaked sponge to extinguish any remaining embers from the previous shot. Step 2. Load gunpowder, which is highly explosive and sensitive to sparks. Step 3. Insert cannonball, which weighs as much as a modern microwave. Step 4. Pack it all down with a ramrod. Incorrectly doing this can create sparks. Step 5. Add primer powder to the touch hole. Step 6. Stand back and pray to whatever gods might hear you. Step 7. Fire, causing the cannon to violently recoil and potentially crush your legs. Your role in this merry dance is powder monkey, which means running gunpowder from the magazine to the cannon. The magazine is where all the explosive powder is stored, making it the most dangerous place on a wooden ship that's essentially a floating tinderbox. One spark, one ember, one static electricity discharge, and you'll be achieving low Earth orbit without the benefit of NASA technology. You sprint back and forth, carrying leather pouches of death, acutely aware that your life expectancy can be measured in microseconds if anything goes wrong. The drill sergeant, a man with one arm and a philosophy best described as enthusiastically nihilistic, times your crew with an hourglass. Too slow, and it's reduced rum rations. Too fast, and you might make dangerous mistakes. Just right, and you simply continue living in this nautical nightmare. After 2 hours of drilling, your arms feel like overcooked noodles and your legs have developed an interesting new shape. But there's no rest for the wicked, and according to every priest from here to Rome, you're definitely wicked. As gun drill ends, the ship's lookout calls down from the crow's nest. There's a sail on the horizon. Your Spanish merchant target is right on schedule. The atmosphere on deck shifts from regular misery to excited misery tinged with mortal dread. If you're finding this nightmarish nautical narrative soothing, don't forget to like and subscribe. Nothing helps you sleep like the knowledge that at least you're not on a pirate ship in 1718, Part 7, Dinner and a Show. The show is violence. The Spanish merchant ship is still hours away, which means it's time for the day's final meal. Dinner. By now you might be thinking, surely dinner offers some culinary variation? Oh, my sweet summer child. Tonight's feast. Is salted fish, the parts of the catch too questionable for lunch, floating in a broth that's equal parts seawater and grease? There might be a vegetable or two, but they've been boiled beyond recognition into grey lumps that taste vaguely of despair. The most exciting dinner development is that the biscuits now have blue spots of mould along with the weevils. The old-timers claim the mould is medicinal. They may be right, or they may be experiencing advanced stages of brain rot from mercury poisoning. Many sailors treated their syphilis with mercury, leading to the cheerful saying, "A night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury." As the sun begins its descent, the captain announces the battle plan for tomorrow's merchant ship encounter. It's less plan and more general guidelines for mayhem, but everyone nods as if they're receiving the tactical wisdom of Sun Tzu. The strategy is simple. Fly friendly colours until the last moment, switch to the Jolly Roger when close enough, fire a warning shot, and hope the merchants surrender without a fight. Pirates, contrary to their bloodthirsty reputation, preferred avoiding battle when possible. Damaged ships, dead crew members, and sunk treasure all represented bad business. However, this captain has a reputation to maintain, and he makes it clear that if the Spanish ship resists, there will be no quarter given. No quarter means no mercy. Everyone dies. You look around at your crewmates, wondering how many have killed before. Based on their expressions ranging from grim acceptance to disturbing enthusiasm, the answer is most of them. After dinner comes the closest thing to entertainment aboard, storytelling. The older sailors spin yarns about massive sea creatures, islands of gold, and women in various ports who may or may not be composite characters. These tales grow more magnificent with each retelling, like a fisherman's catch that gains 10 pounds every time he describes it. Tonight's featured entertainment is a story about a kraken that allegedly ate the storyteller's previous ship whole. Crew and all except me, because I was clinging to a barrel of rum that the beast found too intoxicating to consume. No one believes him, yet everyone listens raptly. In a world without Netflix, this is premium content. As night falls, the lookout confirms the Spanish ship has altered course. They've spotted you and are trying to flee. The captain orders full sails. The chase is on, which means no one sleeps tonight. Instead, extra rum is distributed to keep everyone alert and, more importantly, too intoxicated to fully process the danger ahead. You take your position for the night watch, staring out at the black water. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of rain. A storm is brewing, both literally on the horizon and figuratively in your immediate future. Tomorrow you'll either be significantly richer or extremely dead. The middle ground is less likely than finding a clean fork aboard this floating petri dish. Part 8. Midnight Musings, featuring existential dread. The night watch is divided into 4-hour shifts. Yours is from midnight to 4 in the morning, the dead hours when the mind plays tricks and the sea whispers promises of sweet release into the depths. Your duty is simple. Watch for other ships. Watch for land. Watch for sea monsters. Yes, seriously? and periodically ring a bell to prove you haven't fallen asleep or jumped overboard. The monotony would be mind-numbing if your mind wasn't already occupied with cataloguing your many physical discomforts. Let's start from the top. Your scalp is infested with lice, as is everyone's. They're such a constant companion that pirates have drinking games about who can catch the biggest one. Your current champion is named Ferdinand and lives behind your left ear. Your skin has developed at least 3 new and exciting rashes since boarding. One looks like a map of Ireland, one resembles a constellation of weeping stars, and the third is best not discussed in polite company, which fortunately doesn't exist here. Your teeth, those that remain, ache constantly. One molar in particular seems to be communicating directly with Satan via throbbing pain messages. The ship's surgeon has offered to remove it with something that looks suspiciously like the tool used to remove barnacles from the hull. You've politely declined 5 times. Your hands are a topographical map of cuts, calluses, and mysterious puncture wounds. Your fingernails are black with embedded dirt and possibly gangrene. You haven't had all 10 fingers properly cleaned since Spain was on friendly terms with England. Your feet, perpetually bare and wet, have developed a fungus that gives new meaning to the phrase two-toned. Parts are fishbelly white, others are an angry red, and the spaces between your toes are best described as experimental. And somewhere, deep in your intestines, a civil war is being waged between the various bacteria, parasites, and microorganisms you've ingested. Judging by the symphony of sounds emanating from your midsection, the battle is not going well for either side. But physical discomforts aside, it's the mental landscape that's truly concerning. As you stare into the void of the nighttime ocean, existential questions bubble up like the gas from a decomposing whale. What series of poor decisions led you here? Is your mother still lighting a candle for your return? Will your death be quick or featuring multiple creative amputations? If you do somehow survive and acquire treasure, what are the chances you'll live long enough to spend it? The answers aren't forthcoming, but the night offers plenty of time to contemplate them. The only interruption to your philosophical crisis is the occasional need to shake a rat off your foot. Speaking of rats, they own the ship more than any human does. They've been here longer and will remain after you're gone, either by desertion, death, or promotion to rat food.
At night they grow bold, scurrying across sleeping men and helping themselves to anything edible or formerly edible. The largest rat on board, a behemoth nicknamed the Admiral, due to his imperious demeanour and apparent immortality, is said to be older than any crew member.
Some claim he was on board when Blackbeard himself captained a vessel. Others insist he's a reincarnated pirate. All agree that killing him would bring catastrophic bad luck, so he struts around with the confidence of a creature who knows he's untouchable. The Admiral passes by your feet now, giving you an appraising look before continuing on his nighttime inspection. You've just been evaluated by vermin and somehow feel you've been found wanting. In the distance, lightning illuminates the Spanish merchant ship you're pursuing. It's moving fast, using the coming storm for cover. Your captain is taking a risk, following them into weather that could tear the sails to shreds, but the promise of Spanish silver is too tempting. The first fat raindrops begin to fall. Your night watch just got significantly more miserable. Part 9. Storm and Stress. Emphasis on stress. The storm hits with the subtlety of a drunken blacksmith. Suddenly, and with gratuitous violence, rain stings your face like tiny daggers, propelled by wind that seems to have a personal vendetta against anything still standing. The ship pitches wildly, making the simple act of remaining upright an Olympic-worthy achievement. The darkness is near total, broken only by lightning flashes that transform the world into a stark tableau of water and desperation. The captain is at the helm, roaring orders that are immediately shredded by the wind. Men scramble to secure loose items and adjust sails. One misstep on the slick deck means either a broken limb or a one-way trip overboard. In this weather, man-overboard procedures consist mainly of shouting farewell and making the sign of the cross. Something cracks above. Part of the foremast has splintered. Two men dash up the rigging to secure it, looking like spiders on a web being shaken by a sadistic child. One slips, dangles by one arm for an agonizing moment, then somehow pulls himself back up. There's no safety equipment, no harnesses, just calloused hands and the burning desire not to die today. Your job during the storm is to bail water. The ship is taking on water faster than seems physically possible, and you're part of a desperate bucket brigade trying to keep tons of ocean from dragging you to the seafloor. Your arms burn, your back screams, but stopping means drowning, so you don't stop. The Spanish ship has disappeared completely in the chaos. The pursuit is temporarily abandoned in favor of not becoming an artificial reef. Pirates may be greedy, but they're not stupid. Usually, hours pass in a blur of water, noise, and increasingly creative blasphemy from your crewmates. Religious affiliations that seemed theoretical on calm seas become suddenly relevant as men strike bargains with any deity willing to listen. Just before dawn, the storm begins to subside, not out of mercy, but like a predator growing bored with batting around its prey. The rain lightens from biblical deluge to merely extremely unpleasant, and visibility extends beyond the end of your arm. The damage assessment begins as grey light seeps into the world. The ship is intact, but wounded. The foremast is cracked, the mainsail is torn, and at least one cannon has broken free of its moorings and crushed a man's leg. That man is being given rum while the surgeon examines what remains of his limb with the enthusiasm of a child unwrapping a birthday present. And there goes the leg. The surgeon holds it up triumphantly before tossing it overboard. The man faints, which is the kindest thing his body could do for him. If he survives the next 3 days without fever taking him, he'll join the ship's growing collection of peg-legged sailors. If infection sets in, which it probably will, given the surgeon wiped his sore on his pants between cuts, he'll be shark food by sunset. But wait. As the storm clouds part, a cry comes from the lookout. The Spanish merchant ship is visible on the horizon, damaged and moving slowly. It seems both predator and prey were mauled by the weather, but the merchant ship fared worse. The hunt resumes. If you're enjoying this suspenseful maritime tale, consider becoming part of our crew by subscribing and hit that notification bell like you're hammering a leak in a storm-tossed hull. Part 10. Breakfast of Champions. Redux. Dawn breaks over a sea still churning from the night's tantrum. No one has slept. Everyone is soaked, salt-crusted, and running on a combination of adrenaline and rum fumes. And yet, the routine of ship.
Life grinds on like the rusted gears of a clock built by a sadist.
It's breakfast time again. The storm has taken its toll on supplies. Half the ship's biscuit is now soggy from seawater that breached the hold. Soggy hardtack achieves the remarkable feat of being simultaneously too soft and still tooth-shatteringly hard, with a bonus flavor profile of mildew and broken dreams. The weevils have drowned, which would be a mercy if they weren't now impossible to separate from the disintegrating biscuit. You're eating insect corpses and flour paste, protein and carbs, a balanced breakfast. Coffee is available this morning, a rare luxury saved for battle days. It's made with seawater and has grounds floating in it like miniature sea mines, but the caffeine content could resurrect the recently deceased. One sip and colors become brighter, sounds sharper, and your hands develop a fine tremor perfect for the detailed work of reloading a flintlock while being shot at. The captain paces the deck, spyglass trained on the limping Spanish vessel. He's smiling, which is more terrifying than his scowl. His teeth, what remains of them, are the color of old parchment with green accents that suggest he might be decomposing from the inside out. When he laughs, seagulls change direction. "They've lost their mizzenmast," he announces. "Gun crews to stations will be within range by midday." The mood shifts palpably. Some men become quieter, methodically checking weapons and mentally preparing for what's to come. Others grow louder, boasting of previous conquests and the Spanish wenches they'll charm with their new gold. One man vomits discreetly over the side. No one mentions it. You're assigned to your cannon again, still as powder monkey. The quartermaster
hands you a pistol, a flintlock that looks old enough to have been used against Julius Caesar.
It has one shot, one. If you need a second shot in close combat, you're expected to use it as a club. Try not to shoot yourself, the quartermaster advises, which isn't as reassuring as he probably intends. The pistol is heavy, cumbersome, and about as accurate as throwing a rock while blindfolded on a spinning carousel. But it's better than facing a Spanish sailor armed with only your winning personality and scurvy breath. As final preparations are made, you notice the ship's cat hiding in the rigging, demonstrating more intelligence than the entire human crew combined. Part 11. The Pirate's Code. Surprise, it's actually a thing. Before battle, the captain calls the crew together for a reading of the ship's articles, the pirate code that governs life aboard. It's less guidelines and more violate these and will feed you your own intestines, but it provides structure to what would otherwise be nautical anarchy. The quartermaster reads them aloud while everyone stands at attention, or the closest approximation possible for men with various skeletal deformities and balance issues. All plunder is to be gathered together and counted with witnesses present. No man may keep secret any treasure on pain of death. Every man shall have equal vote in affairs of moment, and equal share of provisions and drink, equal share of plunder unless injured in battle, whereupon additional compensation shall be awarded. Any man who steals from another crew member shall be marooned with 1 bottle of water, 1 pistol, 1 shot, and 1 cutlass. Any man who deserts the ship or his quarters in battle shall be punished by death or marooning. No striking one another on board, but quarrels to be settled on shore by sword or pistol. The quartermaster shall serve as judge. Lights and candles to be extinguished at 8 o'clock at night. Musicians may have rest on the Sabbath. No boy or woman to be allowed amongst the crew. Any man found seducing any woman and carrying her to sea in disguise shall suffer death. Any man who loses a limb or is severely injured in service shall receive 800 pieces of 8 from the common stock. The captain and quartermaster shall receive 2 shares of a prize. The master, boatswain, and gunner 1 1/2 shares. Other officers 1 1/4. All others 1 share each. Keep your piece, pistols, and cutlass clean and ready for action. With the articles reviewed, the quartermaster brings out the ship's flag, the infamous Jolly Roger. Each pirate captain had his own variation. Yours features a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and a spear piercing a heart in the other. Subtle it's not, but graphic design isn't the strong suit of men who solve most problems with cannons. The flag is raised, and a cheer goes up from the crew, a sound halfway between a battle cry and the wail of the damned. You join in, not out.
Of enthusiasm, but because not joining marks you as either a coward or a Spanish sympathizer.
Neither improves your life expectancy. Before dispersing to battle stations, the captain delivers a speech that's part motivation, part threat. The gist: fight well and enjoy Spanish treasure. Fight poorly and enjoy becoming one with the ocean ecosystem. He reminds everyone that pirates who surrender are hanged, so victory or death are the only options, with victory being marginally preferable. With that cheerful thought, you head to your cannon station, wondering if your mother would recognize the person you've become, or if the dirt, desperation, and developing scurvy have transformed you beyond recognition. If you're enjoying learning why historical pirates were more gangrene and terror than Johnny Depp in eyeliner, tap the subscribe button. Each like extends a pirate's life by 1 day. Or not, but they could use the help. Part 11. The Merchant Encounter. It's just business, extremely violent business. Midday approaches, and with it, your baptism of fire. The Spanish merchant vessel grows from a speck to a recognizable ship. It's larger than yours, but carries fewer. Guns, maybe 6 per side to your 12. The advantage is yours, assuming your cannons don't explode from rust and neglect, which is always a possibility. Protocol dictates that merchant ships be given a chance to surrender before violence commences. Pirates were essentially businessmen with hygiene issues, and damaged goods mean reduced profits. Your captain fires a warning shot, a cannonball deliberately aimed to splash near the merchant ship's bow. The Spanish response comes moments later, a cannonball that splinters the railing 10 feet from your position. Apparently, they've chosen
violence. Unfortunate for them, catastrophic for you. Prepare to fire, the gun captain bellows, and suddenly your job becomes very important. You sprint to the powder magazine, a reinforced room, where the ship's gunpowder is stored.
The master gunner hands you a leather case of measured powder. One wrong step, one spark, one moment of clumsiness, and you'll be having an urgent meeting with your maker. Back at the cannon, you deliver the powder, then retreat to a safe distance. As the gun crew goes through their lethal choreography, the cannon roars, belching flame and smoke, leaping backward on its ropes. The smell of sulfur fills the air, the literal smell of hell, which seems appropriate. All along the ship's side, cannons fire in a devastating broadside. Through the clearing smoke, you see splintered wood on the merchant ship's hull. A cheer goes up from your crewmates. Blood pumping, you run back for more powder. The previously abstract concept of battle has become very concrete, very fast. The Spanish ship returns fire. A cannonball screams through the air and takes a man's head clean off 3 feet from you. One moment he's shouting orders, the next he's a fountain of red with a sudden height reduction. His body stays standing for a surreal moment before collapsing. You're splattered with something warm and wet that you choose not to identify. No time to process. More powder needed. Your legs move automatically while your mind tries desperately to unsee what it just witnessed. 3 more broadsides, and the Spanish ship's mainmast cracks like a twig in a hurricane. It topples, slowly, majestically, crushing anyone unfortunate, enough to be beneath it. With their maneuverability gone, the merchants have 2 choices: surrender or die gloriously. They choose the former, striking their colours and raising a white flag. Now comes the boarding party. You're selected not as a compliment to your fighting prowess, but because they need bodies with pulses. Armed with your single-shot pistol and a cutlass that feels unnaturally heavy in your trembling hand, you climb down into a rowboat along with 15 other men whose expressions range from bloodthirsty to openly terrified. Boarding is less swinging, dramatically on ropes, and more trying not to fall into shark-infested waters while climbing up hooks thrown over the gunwale. The Spanish crew stands assembled on deck, hands raised. They look like you feel exhausted, dirty, and questioning their career choices. The captain addresses them in broken Spanish that manages to convey the essential message: cooperate and live, resist and feed the fishes. The ship's manifest is requested, cargo holds are opened. And there it is, the entire reason for this ridiculous, life-threatening adventure. Silver bars from the mines of Mexico, spices from the East Indies, and fine textiles that will fetch a fortune in Nassau. Your job during the inventory process, a euphemism for methodical theft, is to stand guard over the Spanish crew. They stare at you with a mixture of hatred and pity. One whispers something that sounds like a prayer. Another
spits at your feet.
You maintain what you hope is an intimidating expression, despite the fact that your legs are shaking and you're relatively certain you've soiled yourself at some point during the cannon exchange. The booty is substantial, enough that even a lowly crew member like yourself should receive a share that would take 5 years to earn as a legitimate sailor. That is, if you survive to spend it. As the final crates are transferred to your ship, the captain makes a decision about the Spanish vessel. Today he's feeling merciful. The crew will be left alive on their damaged ship with minimal supplies. They'll likely drift for days before reaching land, but it's better than the alternative, which involves feeding the shark. You return to your ship physically intact, but mentally rearranged. The celebration begins immediately. Extra rum for everyone and promises of proper division of spoils once you reach Nassau. Men who nearly killed each other over a mouldy biscuit yesterday are now embracing like brothers, united in their temporary wealth and ongoing poor hygiene. The Spanish ship grows smaller in the distance as you set course for Nassau. The battle
is over. You've officially become a pirate in more than just name.
Whatever moral compass you once possessed has been recalibrated to point toward profit rather than propriety. Part 12, The Aftermath, or The Peculiar Politics of Pirate Ships. Battle concluded and treasure secured, the ship settles into a strange, new atmosphere. A mixture of elation, exhaustion, and the particular edge that comes with suddenly valuable men anticipating their paydays. The captain, magnanimous in victory, orders a special meal prepared. This turns out to be exactly the same food as always, but with double rum rations, the pirate equivalent of a Michelin-starred dining experience. As you nibble on weevil-infested biscuit that not even victory can make palatable, you observe the complex social dynamics playing out around you. Pirates operated with a surprisingly democratic structure. Major decisions required voting. The captain's authority was balanced by the quartermaster, who represented the crew's interests, and even the lowliest deckhand had rights protected by the ship's articles. But make no mistake, this isn't a utopian, floating commune. It's more like a prison gang with boats and better marketing. Alliances shift like the wind, and today's drinking buddy might be tomorrow's mutiny leader. Speaking of mutiny, you notice small groups forming, heads bent together, in conversation that stops when others approach. The captain notices too and wisely announces that the division of plunder will occur tomorrow at first light. Nothing prevents discord like the imminent distribution of wealth. The ship's hierarchy becomes more evident now. At the top sits the captain, elected by the crew but wielding absolute authority during battle. Today he moves among the men with the smug satisfaction of a gambler whose long odds bet paid off handsomely. Next is the quartermaster, essentially the ship's human resources department, if HR carried dual pistols and once strangled a man with his bare hands over a disputed chicken leg. He maintains order, mediates disputes, and ensures the ship's articles are followed. His word is almost as powerful as the captain's and significantly more trusted. Below them are the specialized officers, the master, navigation, boatswain, ship maintenance, gunner, weapons, and surgeon supervised amputations and creative interpretations of human anatomy. They receive larger shares of plunder and dine at the captain's table, forming a piratical middle management. Then there's you and your fellow deck-apes, the common sailors who do the actual work while the officers stand around pointing and developing skin cancer. You receive equal shares among yourselves, but smaller than the officers. Still, a pirate's share was typically better than a Navy sailor's wage, which explains why so many chose this dubious career path. As night falls, gambling becomes the entertainment of choice. Dice games, crude cards, and bizarre pirate-invented diversions involving rats with ribbons tied to their tails dominate the evening. Fortunes change hands before they've even been officially distributed. By morning, some men will have doubled their shares, while others will have gambled away their paydays. You wisely decline to participate. Your share, probably around $30,000 in today's money, is too precious to risk on games clearly rigged by men who cheat as naturally as they breathe. Instead, you find a relatively quiet corner to contemplate your new status. You're now officially a wanted criminal. If captured by any naval authorities, the best outcome is a quick hanging. The worst involves public torture, followed by hanging your body in chains as a warning to others, all for a bag of silver you may never live to spend. As you ponder this cheery thought, the ship's youngest crew member, a boy of maybe 14 with only one visible sore and 3/4 of his original teeth, practically pristine by pirate standards, asks what you'll do with your share. Dreams of taverns, women, a small plot of land far from the sea. You realize you haven't thought that far ahead. Survival has been your only goal. The concept of after seems like tempting fate. Enjoying this bedtime tale of maritime moral compromise? Gently press that subscribe button like you're searching a corpse for valuables. Too dark? Welcome to Pirate Life. Part 13. Nassau Nights, or How to Spend Money Like You're Dying Tomorrow. 3 days of relatively uneventful sailing brings you to Nassau, the pirate republic of New Providence Island in the Bahamas. Well, relatively uneventful, aside from one man falling overboard during a drunken celebration, not rescued, another losing 2 fingers to an infected splinter, amputated without anesthetic, and a near mutiny over the discovery that the last barrel of edible salt pork had been secretly consumed by the captain's favorites, resolved through a combination of threats and promises. Nassau comes into view like a fever dream of debauchery. In the early 1700s, it functioned as a pirate haven, a place where the laws of nations held no sway and every vice imaginable was available for purchase. The sight of it makes your heart race, though that could also be the early stages of cardiac distress from your vitamin-deficient diet. The harbour teems with ships flying flags from every nation alongside the personal banners of infamous pirate captains. Blackbeard himself might be in port today, so might Charles Vane, Calico Jack Rackham, or Anne Bonny, the female pirate who's said to fight better than any man. Nassau is essentially a pirate convention, if conventions featured more stabbings and venereal disease. Before anyone can go ashore, there's the small matter of dividing the plunder. The entire crew assembles on deck as crates are brought up from the hold. The quartermaster oversees the process with loaded pistols within easy reach, division of spoils being the most likely time for disagreements to turn lethal. Shares are counted precisely. The captain takes 2 portions, officers take 1.5 or 1.25, and crew members like yourself receive 1 share each. Your portion comes to roughly 500 pieces of 8 in silver, plus a small bag of spices and a length of fine Spanish silk. It's more money than you'd see in 5 years of legitimate work. It feels heavier in your hands than its actual weight, perhaps from the blood that was metaphorically, and in some spots literally, spilled to acquire it. Permission to go ashore is granted, and the crew descends on Nassau like locusts with substance abuse issues. Your shipmates have 3 goals, pursued with religious fervour. Drink until they forget they're wanted, criminals dying of scurvy. Visit prostitutes until their money or their questionable stamina runs out. Acquire new clothing that isn't stiff with salt and crawling with lice. You follow them into town, instantly assaulted by Nassau's unique olfactory experience, a blend of unwashed humanity, exotic spices, tropical flowers, open sewage, and burning sugar from rum distilleries.
It smells terrible and wonderful, dangerous and exciting.
It smells like freedom, or at least freedom's unwashed undergarments. The main street is lined with taverns bearing colourful names like the Splintered Mast, the Doxy's Delight, and the Hanged Pirate, featuring an actual mummified pirate. Hanging over the door, a former patron who couldn't pay his tab. You choose one at random and enter a world of noise, smoke, and strategic stickiness. Inside, pirates from a dozen ships mingle with the local population of merchants, craftsmen, prostitutes, and pickpockets. Money changes hands faster than a card-sharp's deck. Rum flows like water, only more plentiful and significantly safer to drink. A 3-legged dog wanders between tables, either begging for scraps or serving as the tavern's health inspector. Hard to tell. You order rum, the first drink you've had, that wasn't rationed or tainted with seawater in months. It burns gloriously going down, killing whatever intestinal fauna have taken up residence during your voyage. The second cup goes down easier. By the third, you're making friends with sailors whose names you immediately forget, a band of musicians using instruments that appear to be assembled from driftwood, animal skins, and optimism, strikes up a tune. Men who could barely stand moments ago find the energy to dance. It's less choreography and more controlled falling, but the enthusiasm is
undeniable. You're approached by a woman wearing more makeup than clothing, with a smile that manages to be both inviting and predatory.
Her name is Whatever You Want It to Be, Darling, and she's willing to provide companionship for the night at a price that would make a bishop blush. In your rum-enhanced state, it seems like an excellent investment, your future self. Dealing with the burning consequences of this decision will strongly disagree. Before you can complete this transaction, a fight breaks out by the bar. 2 pirates, discovered cheating at cards, are now attempting to rearrange each other's facial features using tankards as sculpting tools. The crowd forms a circle, placing bets on which man will remain conscious longer. The tavern owner looks
mildly annoyed, like this is the 3rd fight this hour interrupting his business. Welcome to Nassau, where violence is entertainment, disease is inevitable, and poor decisions are the primary currency. Part 14. Shore Leave Shenanigans, or How
to lose your booty in 24 hours. Morning arrives with all the subtlety of a cannonball to the head. You wake on a beach, half buried in sand, with no memory of how you got there or where your left boot went. Your money pouch is significantly lighter, and you've acquired a tattoo of questionable artistry depicting what might be a mermaid or possibly a diseased manatee. Standing requires 3 attempts and results in a wave of nausea that would impress an experienced sea captain during a hurricane. Your mouth tastes like something died in it, held a funeral, and was then preserved in rum. Last night comes back in concerning fragments, drinking contests with a man who had a wooden stomach, literally, he showed everyone, dancing on tables, purchasing a parrot that immediately escaped, and betting heavily on crab races organized by entrepreneurial locals who definitely rigged the competition. The sun, maliciously bright, reveals Nassau by daylight. It's simultaneously more mundane and more bizarre than it appeared last night. The main street is being cleaned by slaves who look even more miserable than the pirates stumbling back to their ships. Merchants are setting up stalls selling everything from fresh fruit to ammunition to suspiciously authentic treasure maps. You take inventory of your remaining assets. About half your silver remains. The silk and spices were apparently traded for drinks or company. Your pistol, though the powder horn is missing, and your dignity, just kidding, that's long gone. Still, you're richer than you were a week ago, and you haven't been stabbed, which counts as a successful shore leave by pirate standards. Your first priority is food that wasn't prepared by a homicidal ship's cook. Nassau offers a variety of questionable establishments serving dishes that incorporate exotic Caribbean ingredients alongside standard European fare. You select a place that doesn't have visible rats and order whatever the toothless man behind the counter recommends. You're served a stew containing unidentified meat, tropical fruits, and enough spices to temporarily restart your heart. It's delicious in the way that anything not made of salt pork and weevils would be. You eat until your shrunken stomach protests, drawing curious looks from locals accustomed to seeing pirates gorge themselves back to humanity while on shore. With basic needs addressed, you explore Nassau's marketplace. Lodging is your next requirement. Another night on the beach might actually kill you. Nassau offers everything from flea-infested hammocks in crowded boarding houses to private rooms with actual doors, depending on your budget and tolerance for nighttime visitors wielding knives. You select a mid-range option, a room above a tavern, more convenient for future drinking, with only one previous bloodstain on the floor and a window that almost or closes completely. The proprietor demands payment in advance, explaining this policy was established after the unpleasantness with Blackbeard's crew, which he refuses to elaborate on despite your curiosity. Rooms secured, you continue exploring. Nassau in 1718 is a strange mix of frontier town and international trading post. Alongside the expected taverns and brothels are shops selling fine goods from around the world. Silver from Spanish colonies, silks from China, spices from India, and furnishings from Europe. There's even a church, though its congregation seems limited to the oldest prostitutes seeking professional redemption, and pirates so close to death they're hedging their afterlife bets. The minister looks like he's serving a prison sentence rather than a parish. You pass the doctor's office, identifiable by the moaning coming from within and the suspicious red stains on the doorstep. Nassau's physicians specialized in treating pirate-specific ailments, removing bullets, reattaching partially severed limbs, and addressing diseases with names that made even hardened sailors blush. Their medical qualifications typically consisted of stayed conscious during biology lessons and steady hands when sober. The highlight of Nassau's civic architecture is the governor's mansion, originally built for legitimate colonial governors, but now occupied by the self-proclaimed Pirate King of Nassau. The title changes hands regularly, usually through assassination or drunken duels. Currently, it belongs to a former Royal Navy officer who decided that outlawing paid better than enforcing it. As you wander, you encounter shipmates in various states of debauchery. Some are already broke, having spent their entire share on a single legendary night they'll remember in fragments, if at all. Others are engaged in commerce ranging from legitimate, buying new clothing, to questionable, selling items stolen from the Spanish ship that weren't included in the official inventory. The ship's surgeon approaches, now wearing a silk waistcoat that costs more than most men's annual wages. He invites you to join an investment opportunity, a venture to acquire a captive manatee for exhibition in London. You decline politely, not mentioning that you've seen his medical work and wouldn't trust him with a goldfish, let alone a sea mammal. By nightfall, Nassau transforms again. Torches and lanterns cast everything in flickering light that makes even the most mundane buildings look slightly sinister. The temperature drops just enough to make the perpetual blanket of rum sweat.
Uncomfortable.
Music pours from every tavern, each establishment trying to lure customers with increasingly outlandish entertainment. Tonight features a man who can swallow swords, probably a former ship surgeon given his anatomical knowledge, exotic dancers from islands farther south, and a monkey that has been trained to pick pockets and return the loot to its owner. The line between entertainment and criminal enterprise is non-existent. You choose a different tavern from last night, hoping to preserve what remains of your funds. Inside you find a scene remarkably similar to every other pirate gathering. Men drinking as though alcohol might vanish from the earth by morning, dice games with increasingly incomprehensible rules, and boasts that grow more outlandish with each empty cup. After a few drinks, significantly fewer than yesterday, you find yourself in conversation with an older pirate whose weathered face suggests he's beaten the odds and survived this lifestyle for decades. He displays the classic pirate accessories: a hooked hand, left, an eye patch, right eye, and a vocabulary consisting primarily of creative profanity. He offers unsolicited career advice. Piracy has a short-term employment window. Get in, acquire. Wealth rapidly, get out before you're captured or killed. The smart ones retire to small holdings in the American colonies, or return to England with enough money to reinvent themselves as merchants with vague backgrounds. The dumb ones keep pushing their luck until they're decorating harbours as warnings.
To others. Most don't last 3 years, he tells you, tapping his hook on the table for emphasis. I've seen 8 crews come and go. Know how many of those men are still breathing?
4 out of maybe 200. He then buys you a drink with what you're almost certain is your own coin, stolen with a dexterity that belies his apparent age and intoxication level. The night progresses with more drinking, more questionable financial decisions, and a growing awareness that Nassau is simultaneously the best and worst place a man can find himself. It's freedom from the constraints of society, but also freedom from its protections. As you stumble back to your rented room sometime after midnight, you pass a gallows being constructed in the town square. Even in pirate havens, some crimes are considered excessive. Tomorrow's entertainment will apparently include a hanging. The victim's crime: stealing from another pirate. Not killing, not assault, but theft. Because in a society of thieves, the only unforgivable sin is stealing from your own kind. You fall onto your rented bed fully clothed, one hand clutching your remaining money pouch, the other gripping your knife. Even in sleep, there's no safety. In Nassau, if you've made it this far into our grim bedtime story, you deserve something special. Hit subscribe for more historical nightmares told with inappropriate humor. It's like a lullaby, but with gangrene. Part 15. The Journey Home, or Why Pirates Rarely Retired. After a week in Nassau that depleted your funds, compromised your health, and created memories you're actively trying to suppress, it's time to decide your future. The ship is repaired, resupplied, and ready to seek new prey. The captain expects all crew to return, not out of loyalty, but because the ship's articles you signed essentially constitute an employment contract enforceable by keel hauling. You have 3 options. Return to the ship and continue your exciting career of theft, violence, and progressive tooth loss. Attempt to secure passage on a merchant vessel back to civilization. Risky, as they might recognize you as a pirate. Stay in Nassau and join the community of washed-up pirates who serve as cautionary tales for newcomers. With half your money already gone and no practical skills beyond maritime criminality, your choices seem limited. You choose option 1, back to the ship, reasoning that one more successful plundering might provide enough capital for a genuine fresh start. Returning to the morbid vengeance is like reuniting with an abusive relative. Familiar, but not in a good way. The smell hits you first, that unique bouquet of mildew, unwashed bodies and decay that no amount of shore leave can erase from your memory. Your hammock remains where you left it, though someone has apparently used it as impromptu storage for what appears to be a dead seagull. You dispose of this unclaimed treasure over the side. The crew has changed slightly. Some faces are missing. Men who chose desertion despite the risks or who met unfortunate ends in Nassau's less reputable establishments. New recruits have taken their places, looking around with the same shell-shocked expression you wore when, first coming aboard. You find yourself explaining procedures to them with unearned authority, having graduated from completely clueless to dangerously overconfident in just a few weeks. The captain announces your next destination, the shipping lanes off Havana, where Spanish treasure galleons begin their journey back to Europe. It's an ambitious target. These ships are typically well armed and travel in convoys, but the potential payoff is enormous. Instead of merchant goods, you'd be capturing literal tons of silver and gold. As Nassau disappears behind you, you realize with sinking certainty that this is likely a one-way journey. The Spanish Navy actively patrols these waters. The odds of encountering a military ship rather than a merchant vessel are high. The odds of defeating such a ship are astronomically low. Your captain is gambling with your lives for the prospect of retirement-level wealth. The voyage to Cuban waters takes 4 days of hard sailing. You fall back into the rhythm of ship life with disturbing ease. The watch rotations, the terrible food, the casual cruelty, all feel normal now. You've been institutionalized by this floating prison faster than you'd care to admit. On the 3rd day, a shout from the crow's nest. Sails on the horizon. Not one ship, but 3. The captain's spyglass reveals the worst possible scenario, a Spanish galleon flanked by 2 naval frigates. It's the maritime equivalent of finding a delicious meal guarded by 2 hungry lions. A prudent captain would change course immediately. Yours, unfortunately, is not prudent. He's greedy, overly confident, and likely suffering from advanced syphilis affecting his judgment. He orders full sail directly toward the Spanish convoy, announcing that we'll concentrate our attack on the treasure ship while outmaneuvering the military escorts. The crew exchanges glances that communicate a unified sentiment. We're doomed. What follows is a masterclass in poor tactical decisions. Your ship approaches from an angle that gives the Spanish naval vessels clear firing positions. When they raise flags identifying themselves as military rather than merchant vessels, your captain ignores the warning. When they fire a warning shot across your bow, he takes it as a challenge rather than the mercy it represents. The battle is brief and one-sided. Spanish military ships are better built, better armed, and manned by sailors who receive actual training.
Rather than learning combat techniques through tavern brawls.
The first broadside from the lead frigate takes down your mainmast. The second destroys 2 of your cannons and the men operating them. Your captain finally orders a retreat, but it's too late. With damaged sails and the Spanish ships in pursuit, capture is inevitable. The white flag is raised not out of strategic deception this time, but genuine surrender. As the Spanish sailors board your vessel with military precision, you face the harsh reality of pirate life. It almost always ends at the end of a rope. Part 16. The consequences, or legal proceedings for the illegally inclined. Being captured is bad. Being captured by the Spanish when you're an English-speaking pirate is considerably worse. Spain and England exist in a state of perpetual hostility, interrupted by brief periods of official war. As far as the Spanish authorities are concerned, you're not just a pirate, you're an enemy combatant. The surviving crew, about 2/3 of your original complement, are chained together and transferred to the larger Spanish frigate. The wounded are left behind on your sinking vessel in a demonstration of Spanish mercy that feels remarkably unmerciful. Your ship disappears beneath the waves, taking the injured and dead with it. The captain, surprisingly, has survived, though a splinter the size of a small dagger protrudes from his thigh. Below decks on the Spanish ship, conditions make your pirate vessel look like a luxury cruise. You're packed into a space designed for cargo, not humans. There's no room to lie down, barely room to sit, and the ceiling is too low to stand upright. The only light comes from a single lantern that illuminates faces transformed by the universal languages of fear and regret. The journey to Havana takes 2 days. You're given minimal water and hardtack, so stale it makes your pirate rations seem gourmet. Toilet facilities consist of a bucket shared among 30 men. The smell becomes an entity with its own presence. Men who were ready to kill each other for gold pieces days ago now huddle together for warmth and what little comfort human contact provides. Your thoughts turn philosophical, as they often do when death looms. Was the brief taste of freedom and wealth worth the price you're about to pay? Would staying a poor but honest fisherman have been so terrible? The religious among the crew pray openly. The non-religious discover sudden, convenient conversions. Havana Harbor appears on the morning of the 3rd day, a sprawling Spanish colonial port with impressive fortifications and a distinctly unwelcoming aura. As you march through the streets, locals gather to observe the procession of captured pirates. Some spit, some throw rotting fruit, some simply stare with the satisfaction of seeing justice served. Many have lost family members or cargo to pirates. Their hatred is personal and palpable. Your destination is El Castillo de la Real Fuerza, the fortress of the royal force, which serves as military headquarters, governor's residence, and, conveniently, prison. The fortress walls are 13 feet thick, a fact your guide takes particular pleasure in sharing. Not for keeping people out, he explains in broken English, for keeping pirates in. The prison cells are carved directly into the fortress foundation. They're damp, dark, and home to a thriving ecosystem of rats, cockroaches, and spiders that would give entomologists nightmares. The cell you're assigned to already contains prisoners, a mixture of pirates, smugglers, and political dissidents. The unspoken hierarchy places you at the bottom as newcomers, which means the worst sleeping spot directly beneath a leaking section of ceiling and last access to the daily food ration. The legal process begins almost immediately, though legal is a generous term for what transpires. A military tribunal is convened. Each pirate is given approximately 3 minutes to defend himself before the judges, 3 Spanish naval officers who look like they've already written the verdict on the back of their morning breakfast menu. Your defense options are limited. Claim you were forced into piracy, unlikely to be believed. Offer information about other pirate crews in exchange for leniency, risky if your information is deemed insufficient. Plead for mercy based on your minimal involvement, difficult given you were caught actively participating. You opt for option 1, weaving a tale of kidnapping and coercion that would be more convincing if you weren't sporting a fresh pirate tattoo and carrying Spanish coins in your pocket. The judges exchange glances that could be charitably interpreted as skeptical. Your testimony is noted with minimal interest. The entire crew is tried as a unit, with the captain receiving special attention due to his rank. His defense strategy involves blaming his navigational officer for accidentally leading them into Spanish waters while pursuing legitimate prey. The fact that said officer died in the battle and cannot refute this claim seems suspiciously convenient. After a trial lasting less than a day, the verdict is delivered. Guilty on all counts of piracy, theft, and acts of aggression against Spanish vessels and territories. The sentence, to no one's surprise, is death by hanging. The only mercy granted is that you won't be subjected to the more creative Spanish execution methods usually reserved for heretics. Your captain receives special treatment. He'll be hanged last, so he can watch his entire crew die before joining them. It's a psychological torture the Spanish have perfected over centuries of dealing with pirates. The executions are scheduled for dawn tomorrow, giving you approximately 12 hours to make peace with whatever deity you've been alternately cursing and praying to throughout this misadventure. Back in your cell, a priest visits to offer confession. He speaks minimal English, but enough to communicate that your soul is in grave danger, and that repentance is your only hope for avoiding eternal damnation. Several crew members take him up on the offer, pouring out tales of murder, theft, and various creative sins that seem to physically pain the priest to hear. You wonder if confession has a word limit that they're rapidly exceeding. Night falls, bringing no relief from the heat or the mosquitoes that seem to consider pirate blood
A delicacy.
Sleep is impossible. Men talk quietly about their lives before piracy, about women they've loved, children they've fathered and abandoned, dreams they once harbored that definitely didn't include dying in a Spanish prison with dysentery and lice as their final companions. One man weeps openly, confessing he can't swim and has spent his entire pirate career in terror of falling overboard. Another admits he's actually the disowned son of an English earl who turned to piracy after gambling away his inheritance. Your captain sits silently, the wound in his thigh now visibly infected, his eyes glazed with fever and what might be actual regret. Part 17. The Unexpected Reprieve, or When Geopolitics Saves Your Neck. Dawn arrives with the sound of church bells, a cruelly beautiful soundtrack for your final walk. Guards appear, rattling keys and barking orders in Spanish. You're marched, out with the rest of the crew, legs stiff from confinement, eyes blinking painfully in the bright Caribbean sunlight that you're seeing for the last time. The gallows have been constructed in the main plaza, with seating arranged for important officials and wealthy citizens who've come to witness justice being served. It's like theatre for the righteously bloodthirsty. You note with grim humour that they've even set up refreshment stands. Nothing builds an appetite like watching 30 men slowly choke to death, but something is amiss. The crowd seems agitated, not with anticipation, but confusion. Officials are huddled in conversation, glancing nervously at a newly arrived messenger. The execution procession halts as orders are shouted and countermanded. A nobleman in elaborate Spanish court dress approaches, flanked by both military officers and what appear to be English gentlemen in formal attire. The Englishmen scan your group with expressions mixing distaste and assessment, like buyers at a particularly disappointing livestock auction. The announcement comes: war has officially been declared between Spain and England. What was previously a cold conflict has heated to boiling, and in an unexpected twist of diplomatic gamesmanship, all English prisoners, including pirates, are being exchanged for Spanish prisoners held by the English. You're not going to hang. You're going to Jamaica, where you'll be placed in English custody. The irony is not lost on you, saved from Spanish justice only to face English justice which has an equally dim view of piracy but more familiar execution protocols. The transfer happens immediately. Spanish authorities seem eager to wash their hands of you before some bureaucratic reversal forces them to house and feed you longer. You're marched directly from the gallows to the harbour where an English diplomatic ship waits. The contrast between this vessel and every other ship you've been on is stark. It's clean, well-maintained, and doesn't smell like a combination, slaughterhouse and latrine. The English officers treat you not as pirates but as rescued countrymen, at least until you reach Jamaica. It's a strange few days of actual beds, edible food, and medical attention for those who need it. Your captain's leg wound is treated by a proper surgeon who doesn't immediately amputate, which on a pirate vessel would be the first and only treatment option regardless of the injury. Part 18. English Justice, or The Devil You Know. Port Royal. Jamaica greets you with the familiarity of a recurring nightmare. Once the wickedest city on earth and pirate haven extraordinaire, it's now firmly under English control and aggressively respectable. The earthquake that destroyed half the city in 1692 was widely interpreted as divine judgment on its sinful ways, leading to rebuilding efforts that included both physical structures and moral character. The English authorities waste no time in separating your group. The captain and officers are taken to the fort for interrogation. The common crew, that's you, are transported to the local prison to await trial. Unlike the Spanish fortress, this prison is purpose-built for human misery, with all the efficiency the English bring to their colonial enterprises. Your new cell is marginally better than the Spanish one. It's above ground with an actual window, though said window is barely the size of a brick and covered with iron bars, so close together that even the Caribbean sunlight struggles to enter. Your cellmates are a mix of pirates, deserters from the Royal Navy, and local criminals whose crimes range from theft to sedition. Within hours, you realize that English prison food makes Spanish prison food look like a royal banquet. It's a thin gruel containing fragments of what might charitably be called meat, though its original species is indeterminable. The water tastes faintly of copper and strongly of regret. The legal process here is more formalized than in Havana, which isn't necessarily in your favor. English anti-piracy laws have been refined to remove troublesome loopholes. The court has experience with every possible defense, excuse, and plea. They've heard it all before and are unmoved by creative storytelling. Your trial is scheduled for next week, a relative eternity compared to the Spanish tribunal's assembly line justice. This gives you time to construct a defense, but also time to contemplate the precise mechanics of how an English hanging differs from a Spanish one. Answer: technically better rope quality, but the end result is identical. Word spreads through the prison grapevine that the authorities are offering pardons to pirates willing to turn King's evidence against their captains and officers. It's a standard practice designed to sow distrust and gather information. Several of your crewmates
Immediately volunteer, including men who swore blood oaths of loyalty mere weeks ago.
Survival has a way of redefining one's moral boundaries. You consider your options. Testify against your captain and officers in exchange for a pardon. Maintain loyalty and face likely execution. Attempt to present yourself as a forced conscript who never willingly participated in piracy. The third option, while appealing, has a significant flaw. Multiple witnesses can place you at the scene of enthusiastic piracy, weapon in hand. The first option turns your stomach, but your loyalty to a captain whose poor decisions landed you here is understandably wavering. As you weigh these grim choices, unexpected news arrives. Your captain died overnight from his infected wound, sparing the hangman the trouble. This simplifies your moral calculus. You can't betray a dead man. You sign the papers offering testimony about his crimes and those of the now deceased first mate. The prosecutor seems pleased, though he notes your testimony will need to be verified against other accounts. Part 19, the King's Pardon, or Freedom with Asterisks. The day of your hearing arrives with unexpected swiftness. You're bathed against your will, but very much in the public interest, and given clean clothes that immediately identify you as a prisoner seeking mercy rather than a defendant awaiting judgment. It's a costume for a role you never auditioned for, but must now play convincingly. The courthouse is imposing in that distinctly colonial way, trying too hard to mimic London grandeur while sweating profusely in tropical heat. The judge, wearing a powdered wig that's wilting visibly in the humidity, reviews your signed testimony with an expression suggesting mild indigestion. Your performance as a reluctant pirate coerced by cruel officers exceeds your expectations. Years of lying to avoid work details on the ship have apparently honed your acting skills. The prosecutor seems satisfied with your account, which conveniently places all blame on men who are now feeding the fish. The judge consults with court officials, signs several documents with flourishes that suggest importance, and finally addresses you directly. In recognition of your cooperation and considering the unusual diplomatic circumstances of your transfer, this court grants you a conditional pardon under the authority of His Majesty. The conditions are as follows. You will never again engage in piracy or any maritime crime. You will make yourself available as a witness in any future trials related to the crew of the vessel known as the Morbid Vengeance, and you will enter legitimate employment within 30 days or face imprisonment for vagrancy. Just like that, you're free, with conditions that amount to behave or we'll hang you later. It's not ideal, but it beats the immediate alternative of dancing at the end of a rope. Outside the courthouse, reality hits harder than a belaying pin to the skull. You're free but completely destitute. Your few possessions were lost with the ship. The clothes on your back are prison-issued and mark you as either a pardoned criminal or an extraordinarily unfashionable tourist. You have no money, no contacts
in Jamaica, and skills limited to activities that would immediately violate your pardon.
Part 20, Civilian Life, or the Crushing Weight of Respectability. Port Royal, despite its reformation, still offers opportunities for those willing to work. The docks need labourers, taverns need staff who understand sailor behaviour, and merchant. Ships always need experienced hands. Your pardon papers, which you guard more carefully than you've ever guarded actual treasure, open doors that would otherwise remain firmly closed to an ex-pirate. After several days of sleeping in alleyways and eating discarded food that makes hardtack seem gourmet, you secure a position as a dock worker. The pay is minimal, the work backbreaking, and your supervisor is a former Royal Navy boatswain who hates pirates with the passion of someone who's had his ship plundered multiple times. But it's legitimate employment, satisfying the terms of your pardon. Your days settle into a routine of loading and unloading cargo, avoiding the notice of authorities, and saving every penny. The other workers give you a wide berth, having quickly identified you as a pardoned pirate by your distinctive collection of poorly healed injuries, nautical tattoos, and the way you unconsciously reach for a weapon whenever startled. Weeks pass. You rent a small room above a chandler's shop that smells perpetually of tallow, but provides actual privacy, a luxury you'd forgotten existed. You purchase clothes that don't immediately identify you as either a criminal or a scarecrow. You even manage to have meat in your stew once a week, a luxury that makes your pirate self seem like a distant, half-remembered nightmare. But something is missing. The routines of civilization chafe worse than leg irons. The deference required when addressing merchants and officials feels like a betrayal of your brief, savage freedom. You find yourself staring longingly at ships leaving harbor, bound for destinations unknown. You catch yourself calculating the security of merchant vessels and imagining how you'd take them if you had a crew. One night at a dockside tavern, the only type of establishment where you feel remotely comfortable, you overhear sailors discussing a merchant convoy leaving for North America in 2 days. They're short-handed and hiring experienced men with few questions asked. The pay is decent, the voyage legitimate, and it would take you far from Jamaica and the watchful eyes of officials who know your history. It's a chance for a fresh start in the American colonies, where your past might remain conveniently obscured. The alternative is remaining here, loading other men's cargo for pitiful wages until your back gives out, or your pardon is revoked on some technicality. Part 21. The Honest Sailor, or Legitimacy is its own punishment. The merchant ship, Prudent. Elizabeth lacks the dramatic flair of pirate vessel names, but it offers something the morbid Vengeance never did, a reasonable expectation of reaching old age. You sign on as a common sailor, your experience evident enough in your calloused hands, and knowledge of nautical terminology that the first mate asks remarkably few questions about your previous berths. Life aboard a legitimate trading vessel is a study in contrast to piracy. The work is actually harder. Merchants can't afford excess crew, so every man pulls double duty. The food is marginally better but strictly rationed. The discipline is rigid but rarely enforced through violence. Dismissal without pay at the next port is threat enough to keep most men in line. Most shocking is the captain, a sober, religious man who leads daily prayers and expects his orders to be followed because of hierarchical respect rather than fear of being keel-hauled. He maintains distance from the crew not out of paranoia, but professional decorum. It's disconcertingly civilized. The voyage north takes 2 weeks of unremarkable sailing. No ships are chased, no settlements are raided, no captives are taken. The most exciting event is a dolphin that follows the ship for 3 days, which the high crew decides is good luck. You find yourself missing the adrenaline of pirate life, then immediately feel guilty for the thought. Boston Harbor appears on the horizon like a promise of new beginnings. The American colonies represent opportunity, expanding, settlements, growing trade, and importantly, distance from Caribbean authorities who maintain lists of pardoned pirates. Here you might truly shed your past and become something respectable. The colonial port bustles with activity distinctly different from Caribbean harbors. There's industry here, purpose beyond mere survival or pleasure-seeking. Men build, trade, and plan with the intensity of those creating something lasting. It's both intimidating and appealing, a world of stability you've never known. With your wages from the voyage, you secure modest lodgings and begin seeking employment. Your seafaring skills are valuable, but you find yourself drawn to land-based opportunities. After years at sea, solid ground holds its own appeal. You apprentice yourself to a shipwright, reasoning that building vessels combines your maritime knowledge with the stability of shore life. Months pass. You develop routines, acquaintances who might become friends, even regular attendance at a church where the minister doesn't immediately sense your sinful past. You start to believe this new life might actually be sustainable. Then the nightmares begin. Vivid dreams of cannon fire and splintering wood, of men dying under your blade, of those you left to drown when ships went down. You wake sweating, reaching for weapons you no longer carry. The shipwright notices your haunted expression and decreasing productivity. He doesn't ask questions, but his eyes hold understanding. Later, you learn he served in the Royal Navy during campaigns that left similar marks on his soul. Part 22. The Inevitable Return, or once a pirate. Word reaches Boston of war intensifying between England and Spain. Privateering commissions are being issued, legal licenses to attack enemies, shipping while flying English colours. It's piracy with paperwork, the thin veneer of legitimacy barely disguising the fundamental activity, taking other people's property by force at sea. A shipowner approaches the shipyard seeking men with combat experience at sea for a privateering venture. Your employer, knowing nothing specific but everything essential about your past, mentions you might have relevant skills. The meeting is arranged in a tavern where the shipowner, a Boston merchant, with aristocratic pretensions and a fleet of armed vessels, outlines the opportunity. Privateering under letters of marque is a patriotic duty, he explains, though his emphasis on the potential profit suggests patriotism ranks second to pecuniary interests. We target only Spanish shipping, returning a percentage to the Crown, while providing handsome shares to all crew involved in successful captures. The offer sounds remarkably similar to piracy, absent only the black flag, and with the addition of tedious documentation. The crucial difference is that hanging is not the expected career conclusion. You can prey on shipping with the blessing of the same authorities who would execute you for identical actions under different paperwork. You sign on to the privateer vessel Righteous Venture, an irony of naming that isn't lost on you. The crew is a mix of merchants, former Navy men, and suspiciously experienced sailors who avoid direct answers about their previous voyages. You recognize the signs of former pirates like yourself, men trying to navigate a narrow path between their natural inclinations and the hangman's noose. The captain is a former Royal Navy officer who operates with military precision and expects the same from his crew. Unlike pirate captains elected by crew vote, his authority comes from the owner and is absolute. The articles you sign specify harsh penalties for disobedience, desertion, or unsanctioned violence, civilized barbarism compared to pirate codes. Your first patrol yields 2 Spanish merchantmen carrying sugar and indigo from their Caribbean colonies. The captures are textbook, warning shots across the bow, quick surrender from crews unwilling to die for cargo, minimal bloodshed. The ships are escorted to Boston, their cargoes inventoried with exacting precision, paperwork filed in triplicate. It lacks the chaotic thrill of piracy but compensates with reduced risk of immediate death. Your share of the prizes amounts to more money than 6 months of legitimate work. The king's portion seems a small price for avoiding the gallows while essentially continuing your previous vocation. You find yourself enjoying the structure of privateering. The military discipline creates a framework that was absent in the anarchic world of piracy. Weeks turn to months. Your nightmares recede, replaced by a strange contentment. You're still a predator at sea, but now, with society's blessing, you purchase better lodgings, decent clothes, even court a merchant's daughter who finds your seafaring tales exciting without knowing their full criminal extent. Part 23, Peace Breaks Out, or The Privateer's Lament. All good things come to an end, including convenient wars that legitimize maritime theft. 2 years into your privateering career, diplomats in Europe negotiate a peace treaty between England and Spain. The news reaches the colonies weeks later, leaving dozens of privateering vessels suddenly unemployed. The shipowner calls a meeting of captains and officers. "Gentlemen, peace has ruined us," he announces with the disappointment of someone whose patriotism was always suspiciously aligned with his financial interests. Letters of marque are being revoked. All vessels must return to legitimate trade or be sold. The Righteous Venture is reassigned to the Boston-London trade route, a respectable but considerably less profitable enterprise than sanctioned raiding. Most of the crew, including yourself, are offered positions on this new venture. The pay is a fraction of privateering shares, but it's still better than most land opportunities. You accept the position, having developed a loyalty to the ship and its operation. The transition back to legitimate shipping is jarring. Suddenly the Spanish vessels you previously hunted are just fellow merchants navigating the same shipping lanes. Former targets nod in recognition, the professional courtesy of sailors masking whatever resentments might simmer beneath. The Atlantic crossing reminds you of all the reasons sailors traditionally hated long voyages. Monotony interrupted by terror. When storms arise, disease spreading through confined quarters, the peculiar madness that comes from seeing nothing but water for weeks. Without the anticipation of combat and prizes, the journey's hardships seem less worthwhile. London appears through morning fog like a dream of civilization, sprawling, dirty, magnificent, and overwhelming after colonial Boston. Most of the crew take shore leave with the eager desperation of men who've been confined too long. You wander the city in a daze, the sheer number of people more disorienting than any storm at sea. In a Fleet Street tavern favoured by sailors, you encounter a man you recognise from your pirate days, a gunner from another vessel who apparently followed a similar path from piracy to privateering to legitimate trade. The recognition is mutual, leading to drinks and reminiscences carefully phrased to avoid incriminating details within public hearing. Peace is a privateer's curse, he confides after several pints. But there's still opportunity for men like us who find legitimate work constraining. The East India Company loses ships to pirates in the Indian Ocean and hires fighting men who don't ask too many questions about native rights. Africa needs men familiar with coastal raiding to facilitate the slave trade. Or there's always the Caribbean. Spanish peace doesn't extend to every flag. The possibilities hang in the air like smoke. Legitimate work adjacent to criminality, the comfortable middle ground you've come to prefer. You consider your options while London's opportunities and temptations swirl around you like competing currents. Part 24. Full circle, or choosing your chains. The righteous venture remains in London for 3 weeks, unloading colonial goods and taking on English manufactures for the return journey. You use this time to consider your future. Remaining with the merchantman means stability but limited prospects. The alternatives offer better compensation but edge closer to the criminality you've been trying to escape. On the night before departure, you make your decision. The sea has claimed you fully, but on your terms. You return to the ship, signing on for not just the return journey, but a minimum 2-year commitment. The captain seems pleased, having recognized your value as an experienced hand who understands both military discipline and criminal thinking, useful for spotting trouble before it erupts. The Boston-London route becomes your world. 4 voyages, annually, each with its own challenges and monotonies. You advance to bosun's mate, then bosun, responsibilities increasing with your reputation for reliability. The merchant's daughter becomes your wife, providing a home and eventually children, who know you only as a respectable sailor rather than a former predator of the seas. Years pass. War and peace cycle between European powers, occasionally creating privateering opportunities that you now observe with the detachment of someone who's found contentment elsewhere. Your nightmares return only rarely, usually after encountering men from your previous life or hearing news of pirate executions. On your 40th birthday, an age few pirates live to see, you stand on the deck of the righteous venture as Boston Harbor comes into view. The irony doesn't escape you. You've spent your life seeking freedom only to find it within the constraints of legitimate work, family responsibility, and social respectability. The unfettered liberty of piracy was always an illusion. Its price too high, its rewards too temporary. Later that evening, your young son asks for a bedtime story about the sea. You tell him carefully edited tales of adventure, omitting the blood and terror, emphasizing courage and quick thinking. He listens wide-eyed, seeing you as a hero rather than the complex, compromised man you know yourself to be. When I grow
Up, he announces with childish certainty. I want to be a sailor like you, father. You ruffle his hair, feeling the weight of all you've seen and done.
The sea is a harsh mistress, you tell him, echoing words you heard countless times as a young man. But she's fair in her way. She gives nothing for free, takes more than she gives, but offers something you can't find on land. What's that? He asks sleepily. You consider all the possible answers, the philosophical freedom, the brotherhood of crews, the raw challenge of survival against overwhelming odds. But the truth is simpler. Perspective, you answer finally. The sea teaches
you what matters and what doesn't. Most of what men fight and die for isn't worth the smallest wave that crashes against our bow. He doesn't understand, of course. Perhaps someday he will. You hope his education comes less brutally than yours did.
Part 25, Epilogue, or Why the Golden Age of Piracy Tarnished. The golden age of Atlantic piracy lasted barely a generation. Roughly 1690 to 1730, it flared like powder in a pan, brilliant and brief. The popular imagination preserves pirates as romantic outlaws, brave rebels against authority, free spirits unconstrained by society's rules. The reality, as you've experienced, was considerably darker. Pirates were created by war, men trained in violence, then abandoned when peace made them inconvenient. Naval powers expanded rapidly during conflicts, then contracted just as quickly when treaties were signed. Thousands of experienced sailors found themselves unemployed, their specific skills unmarketable in peacetime economies. Piracy wasn't just crime. It was unemployment insurance for men who knew no other trade. The myth portrays pirate treasures of gold and jewels. The reality was more mundane. Cargoes of sugar, tobacco, textiles, and sometimes slaves. Pirates rarely retired rich. Most died young from violence, disease, or execution. Those who survived often did so by accepting pardons and returning to legitimate society, carrying psychological wounds that never fully healed. Pirate democracy, the much celebrated election of captains and equal share distribution, existed alongside brutal discipline, torture as entertainment, and casual murder. Freedom for some meant enslavement or death for others. The Brotherhood of the Sea was real but conditional, lasting only until resources grew scarce or danger imminent. As colonial powers consolidated control over shipping lanes and established permanent naval presence in contested waters, piracy became increasingly untenable. Improved military tactics, better intelligence networks, and more efficient law enforcement gradually eliminated safe harbors and sympathetic communities. The profession that once offered desperate men a chance at wealth and power became a near-certain path to an early grave. Your own journey, from reluctant pirate to privateer to legitimate sailor, mirrors the historical transition. As nation-states strengthened, they channeled maritime violence into sanctioned outlets like navies and colonial companies. The same skills that made men effective pirates made them valuable agents of expanding empires if they were willing to accept authority and structure. The few true believers, those who genuinely sought freedom outside society's constraints, were systematically hunted down, their deaths made public spectacle as warnings to others. Blackbeard, Calico Jack, Black Bart all ended on the gallows or in bloody last stands, their brief rebellions crushed by the machinery of emerging global order. From your perspective as an older man who survived both piracy and respectability, you recognize the fundamental truth. Absolute freedom is an illusion. We all serve something, a captain, a king, a family, our own appetites. The only real choice is what chains we wear and whether we've selected them ourselves or had them forced upon us. The sea remains the last genuine wilderness, but even she has been mapped, charted, and divided among powers who enforce their claims with uncompromising violence. The brief window when individuals could seize their fortunes through audacity and brutality has closed. The age of empires leaves little room for those who recognize no flag. As you watch your son grow and consider following in your footsteps as a merchant sailor, you wish you could explain this truth. We are all pirates of sorts, taking what we need to survive in a world of limited resources. The only meaningful difference is whether we acknowledge the cost of our existence and who pays it. But such philosophy is beyond a child's understanding. Instead, you teach him practical skills, navigation, rope work, weather prediction, while silently hoping he never experiences the desperate circumstances that led you to your darkest choices. You've given him something you never had, a legitimate beginning, a name uncursed by wanted posters, a future unshackled from a criminal past. On quiet nights when sleep eludes you, you sometimes wonder about former crewmates from the morbid vengeance. Most are surely dead, executed, diseased, or drowned in forgotten encounters. Perhaps a few like you found their way to legitimacy through luck and compromise. The sea keeps her secrets, including the fates of those who once thought themselves her masters rather than her servants. Your life now is defined by regularity, departure dates, cargo manifests, homecomings. It lacks the savage intensity of your youth, but offers compensating comforts, the respect of your community, the love of family, the quiet satisfaction of craft, well practiced. You've made peace with this trade-off, recognizing it as the bargain most humans eventually strike with existence. The pirates of your era will be forgotten by history, then reinvented as caricatures, entertaining villains in stories told to children, their violence sanitized, their desperation transformed into
adventure.
The complex reality, economic refugees wielding the only power available to them, will disappear beneath colorful flags and buried treasures that rarely existed. But you know the truth. You carry it in your scars, in your nightmares, in the wary vigilance that never quite leaves even decades after your last criminal act. The pirate's life was never glorious. It was brutal survival masquerading as freedom, a bargain made by desperate men whose options had been systematically eliminated by powers beyond their control. When young men speak romantically of piracy in taverns, you hold your tongue. Let them keep their illusions. The reality would serve no purpose except to haunt their dreams, as it occasionally still haunts yours. Better they choose legitimate hardship than discover too late that freedom purchased with blood rarely brings peace. Your journey from forced fisherman to reluctant pirate to privateer to respected sailor spanned borders, allegiances, and moral codes. The only constant was the sea herself, unforgiving, unchanging, indifferent to human concerns, yet strangely comforting in her consistency. In her vastness you found your place, not as conqueror or rebel, but as humble navigator of forces beyond your control. As your life moves toward its inevitable horizon, you find yourself increasingly at peace with all you've been. Victim and perpetrator, criminal and citizen, pirate and father. These identities aren't contradictions but continuations, each growing from circumstances both chosen and imposed. The sea taught you her final lesson. There is no absolute freedom, only the dignity of choosing which necessity to serve. You chose family, stability, and quiet respectability after sampling the alternatives. It wasn't surrender, but wisdom, the recognition that true freedom exists not in rejecting all constraints, but in selecting those that align with your deepest values. And so ends our tale of why you'd hate being a pirate in the 1700s, not just because of the rotten food, disease, violence, and likely early death. But because the freedom promised was largely illusory, the brotherhood conditional, the treasure rarely worth the cost. The romantic myth serves those who never experienced the desperate reality, while those who lived it mostly sought escape rather than glorification. Sleep well, dreaming of safer waters and choices made not from desperation but determination. The age of pirates has passed, but the human hunger for freedom remains, finding expression not in black flags and blood-soaked decks, but in the quieter rebellions of living with integrity in a world that rarely rewards it. Subscribe if you've ever felt caught between freedom and security. And remember, even the most romantic outlaws mostly just wanted a bath and a decent meal.